Well, I see that it's 7 o'clock. So I think what we're going to do, 7 o'clock my time, just to let you know, I'm in Greece, Zala Fashant here. I'm going to let Karen start talking. And obviously, we're right on the top of the hour. So we'll do it that way. And Karen, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Welcome to the cycle of course design. My name is Karen LaPlant. Um, Both Zale and I have been in the Minnesota State Colleges and Universities system for many years. We are both recently retired. I'm now, instead of teaching, I've been teaching in business and IT for online, most of it, for the past 30 years. I am now doing curriculum development and instructional design work for a four-year university, Metropolitan State University, but still within the Minnesota State Colleges and Universities system. And now I will turn you over to I'm in Florida at the moment, my co-host Zala, who is in Greece.
And so let's keep rolling there with the fact that, as Karen said, we've worked together. We worked at the same institution together. We have worked at the system level together, and we've had the opportunity to be able to do faculty development. And so this is something that's near and dear to my interest and Karen's interest because we really think that course design becomes such an important part in what's happening for students to be able to be successful, for you to be able to retain students. And obviously, during this past year now, we've seen that we've had some issues with the whole idea of COVID and getting people to redesign courses to move online and everything that way. So we'll be glad to try and answer your questions. We're going to try to make this interactive. So get ready to type some stuff into chat and share that with us so we have a little record of all of those things and your ideas as we go through here. So today we're really going to be looking at you analyzing your current course design practice. You can evaluate the model. We'll show you in just a moment here to get sort of this broader perspective of course design and the whole idea of faculty buy-in at your institution so that you can maybe take a look at the campus process that we go through this way. And we'll let you know that we have written a book. We have put all of this information into the book, and at the same time, which is, if you look in the upper right-hand corner, that's the title of the book as well. And we've been working this past year with over 350 faculty on redesigning courses, and that's happened during the Online Course Design Institute that we provided to campuses. It's also happened individually through workshops and things that way that we've done for people at conferences and whatnot. So anyway, let's share that. So this is the cycle of course design. And as we take a look at it, just kind of a whole map of the kinds of things that we think become important. And more recently, even more important, it's become more complex as we're going to design a course. So we'll quickly talk you through this and then we'll get into some of the components right after that. So if we start in the lower left-hand corner here, we're looking at this whole planning for course design, which, as we have worked with faculty, is a piece that many people don't really do. They start jumping into learning outcomes and all the parts and what needs to be in the course and everything that way. So we'll walk you through some of the planning that we do. We're going to then also take a look at that teaching strategy alignment for the outcomes, the assessments, and the activities. We'll break that down into the sort of idea of a designed communication plan for your course, accessibility needs that will take place, plus the integration of learning technologies. All of those things move up into the factor of significant learning that Dee Fink talked about many years ago. Dee, in fact, even wrote the foreword to our book because it's kind of the next level of what's happened and how things have changed since that time. We're also going to talk to you a little bit about the whole idea of measuring course quality. And so as we look at, while we can do course quality, we look at what we can look at for assessing student learning and this whole sort of assessment piece that comes along down the right-hand side here, assessing student learning that leads into program and department assessment and finally works into institutional assessment. And the last part of it, of course, is your reflection on your course, your teaching practice, how students are succeeding, and everything that way, and getting a chance to increase your own learning how to learn capabilities as you look for the total cycle to get back to, do I need to redesign the course? How many things have changed? And we'll talk about that in detail in just a minute. So, as we do, let's look at the course situational factors. One of the things that we work with faculty on is we talk about this planning stage. And the whole idea is let's recognize the situational factors that play a role in the course. And as you can see on the left-hand side, there are many different things, and there's even more than this that comes into play as we look at that. So we'll break this down and talk about the specific context of the situation, class size, meeting time frequency, the way you're going to be delivering it. And that's one of the most important things that faculty and instructional designers have really worked with in this past year. The physical classroom conditions, in this case, it's the technology requirements for delivering the same kind of learning online that many people struggled with, went through and had to solve that problem. It's the expectations of others, the people that are listed there. What does the institution think? What does your curriculum say? What does your accrediting bodies or have an opportunity to talk about what you need to be able to have in your courses, in your curriculum? The nature of your subject, there's a whole idea of student perception. There's the idea that is this going to be a theoretical class, a practical class, a combination of the two? Is your class primarily convergent thinking or divergent thinking? We want to take a look at the characteristics of learners. And so you can see that that's one of the things that obviously most of you know something about as you're working this and you're looking, and maybe you're redesigning the course because of the characteristics of learners. One of the things that we've added to this recently that faculty have really enjoyed is the whole idea of designing courses that are based toward introverts or toward extroverts and identifying themselves as an introvert or extrovert in the characteristics of the teacher. And so as we really start to break this down and look at it, we'll find that a lot of people who are extroverts design a course set up for extroverts to succeed, and those who are introverts tend to do the same thing for introverted students. And so it's a combination. And if you're an extroverted person, how do you make sure that introverted students will have the opportunity to be successful in there? So what I'd like you to do is take a look at how many of you have actually done this kind of level of thinking, have practiced this, have looked at this before, or on your way to really starting the design of the course. So in Zoom, if you can click yes or no, that would be great. Karen can give us kind of a quick update for the number of yeses and nos that we have there.
Yeah, you could do it in chat too, but there is a reactions under the participant list where you could do yes or no, and then it counts it for us.
Karen, what are you seeing so far?
Well, only a few people did the yes and no's. There's a lot in chat. Most of the chat
Okay.
is no.
Okay. So as we look at it with about 50 people in the room, this is pretty average as to what it is that we've contended with as we've worked with faculty on campuses or online on their campus, or actually at their dining room tables now this past year. We really get an opportunity to see that a lot of people haven't gone through this, but many of these things actually come into play when it comes to designing your course, and to be able to be mindful of these as you go through and think about the course that you want to design. So the next thing that we do in this sort of planning stage is we take a look at the pedagogical challenge. One of those factors that we have people list out and reflect on and think about is going to be that chance that they really want to start looking at what is the major pedagogical challenge that gets in the way of your course starting out successfully. And if you don't have the opportunity to really look at that mitigation for that, what is the potential impact for the course? So identifying this, what's the plan to be able to solve that? For most of you, it was probably in this past year having something to do with getting students to move online, figuring out how they can help figure out how they're going to be able to do labs, hands-on skills, those types of things, and be able to feel successful as they're going through that, but really talking through all the changes that they were going through, your own changes that you were going through when it came to teaching, and everyone's feelings of what they were going through personally when they soon became sort of trapped and went through lockdowns and these extended periods of time where we really didn't get to visit with one another and see one another. That was what we found was one of the biggest pedagogical challenges for that. Obviously, if your course is at the beginning of the curriculum, in the early sort of novice stage, you have different pedagogical challenges than those people who are working toward that capstone type course at the end. So in chat right now, when you think about the courses that you've been teaching and the way you've had to redesign over this past year during the pandemic, what was one of the biggest pedagogical challenge you actually had to address in your course?
So we got some good comments. Things like convincing people that their course really could be taught online. Severe math anxiety, that's always a good one. Working students don't have much time. Lack of learning communities. Handwritten work. Participation in the Zoom classroom. Getting people to follow content, getting people to follow instructions, and making sure that learners who are challenged could learn effectively. Those are all good, all challenges.
Exactly. And we've had people who are talking about you had to sort of re-examine your patience with your students, yourself, everything along the line here, sort of really take a look at how the timing of everything was going to take place in the course because it didn't happen the way you're really accustomed to having it happen. And the third part that we work on in this whole planning up front is this idea of having a big dream. When students are taking your course, how is this course going to really speak to them about the purpose, about the way it's going to influence them for the rest of their lives? How will it make a difference and make them successful? And how will they be able to use it professionally and in their personal achievements? So what I'd like to do right now is have you take just a minute to take a look at it and think about one of your courses. And if you would share, what is the big dream for your course? What is it that you really want students to walk away from that's going to impact them for the rest of your lives?
Okay, the first one just says opportunity to meet and exceed outcomes. See themselves as leaders, that's getting more into a big dream. Enable students to become effective communicators throughout their lives. Learn how to learn.
And I think as we look at all of these types of big dream things, we're really looking beyond getting them to simply, I wish they'd come to class prepared. I wish they would read the assignments in the book or the handouts I'm giving or anything like that. That's great. We all want that. But obviously it's leading to something bigger. And for students, we really want it to be something more like, are we going to be able to, they won't ask, why do we need to take this class anyway? We're going to make that obvious for students right up front. And the way we design a course is going to be really focused on them achieving the big dream. All right. Any others, Karen?
Yes. Understanding their own power. Understanding that teaching online is a different approach.
And
Getting
learning
teachers
online.
Right, in learning online. Getting teachers to feel empowered to design and take action to design and deliver their own lessons. To look at online courses in a positive light, not something that was just thrown on them. Essentially create an active learning experience to keep them motivated. Be brave chickens. So all sorts of things.
Great, great. Let's take a look at the integrated course design model itself. So as we break this down, we looked at the situational factors. We're really looking at this alignment piece right now, which becomes extremely important. So when you look at your learning goals or learning outcomes. And again, the terminology changes by institution. We look at the assessments, we look at the teaching and learning activities. We're going to really sort of break this down. And we used, and because we find this to be very valuable, the Fink's taxonomy. And of course, Fink really spent a lot of time taking the Bloom's taxonomy and working it so that it's not just the cognitive side, but it is the affective side as well. So you can see everything on the left-hand side of this, or in the last three bullets, tend to be more the affective side that's in there. Our work with faculty has always been, well, I really want them to take these kinds of things with them. I want them to understand the value in the content that I'm sharing with them, as well as knowing that content, applying it, and integrating it. We really want them to do more and more of that kind of a thing in the future. All right, so you can see we've used an example like this. It was a 3-column table where we line these things up. And we did the dual delivery. So it's both a face-to-face or an online type of a situation. And then you could easily combine things to make a blended situation out of this here. So we looked at the verbs, we looked at the outcomes, we looked at cleaning those kinds of things up so that it was really easy for students to start to see what they were going to do. And then we talk about what are the assessment pieces that we're going to line up with them. Because oftentimes when we design courses, we start with outcomes, we add a whole bunch of learning activities in there, and by the time we're tired and get to the assessment pieces, we throw some tests or whatever at them, and we start to realize that sometimes, as we've peer-reviewed people's courses before, the outcomes and the assessments don't line up with one another. So we really did the backwards design of looking at assessments first and then going through the learning activities. We actually then recreated this and made it a 6-column table because we knew that people had unit objectives or that there were competencies in some of your programs that you needed to work with and needed to blend those in with your course outcomes. There were the assessment pieces, but there was also what are the time and resources that you're going to need, and the same thing with the learning activities. Multiple learning activities, scaffolded, that are going to be able to give them the practice to be able to hit the assessments, both formative and summative. So another piece that I told you about earlier was going to be this course communication plan. And so as we take a look at this, a lot of the times when we worked with faculty, we found out that many of them didn't have a formal course communication plan. They reacted to emails they got, they reacted to information that came from students, but we really thought it was important for them to intentionally design a communication plan for each course. And granted, courses are going to be different. So if you're teaching 4 courses per se, then you might actually have 4 different course communication planned. However, many pieces will start to look alike. So we'll talk about that. So what I'd like to do again, by going to those reaction buttons of yes or no, could you tell us how many of you have a formalized sort of course communication plan that is set up so that you know exactly how, when, and to whom you're going to be communicating throughout the course? If you need to, go ahead and throw those in chat as well, if that's easier for you. Karen, did you see a total there?
Yeah, it's about even again between yeses and nos. And the
Okay.
yeses and nos in chat.
Okay.
About half and half again.
All right, great. And so that became extremely important. That was sort of an aha moment as we've worked with faculty on that, because what it does is it cleans it up, it makes it intentional, you know how it is, and in the online environment, it obviously builds that communication by providing reminders, feedback, all of those pieces. How is that going to happen? And you know that it's going to happen. And the more that you can do and automate some of those things, the less you have to do in the sort of the management of the course. You get the opportunity to spend the time communicating with students and really watch their learning.
We have
All
some
right.
late entries, so now it's twice as many no's as yeses.
Okay. All right. And that's usually what we found before. There were
Right.
very seldom any people, many of the people that we've worked with that have actually created that before. So that's important. Well, as all of you know, we have that responsibility for ADA compliancy to be able to make sure that our course materials are all accessible for all learners. And so as we looked at those pieces, one of the things that we spend some time doing is we look at the different ways that your course needs to be able to meet the needs of those students. And so accessibility in this portion starts to really take a look at, are all of your documents easily accessible so that e-readers and other kinds of technologies can be used. It makes sense. Students will be able to follow it. The one thing when I always work with faculty, I tell them, imagine if you were taking your course in an online environment and you were blind. And if you couldn't see everything and you were depending on an e-reader, imagine what that experience for students is. We're sharing this one from Minnesota IT Services, which is great. Your state probably has one too. Your campus may even have something that goes down to this level where you can really take a look at what is required from multimedia, the things that are going on with, dealing with maps and meetings and social media, any of the apps that you may want to bring in with your course. Obviously, your LMS has probably already been tested at some degree, and it's a really great opportunity to make sure that all students are able to see those materials. Once you start teaching your class, you hate to be sort of having to try and figure out how to make those things happen. So it needs to happen right away in the design of the course. And oftentimes, faculty will use a document that they've used for the last 10 years, and they just carry it forward and carry it forward and carry it forward. The problem is it's already old, and we've had to update software, we've had to do all kinds of different things with it to be able to make sure. So we run it through an accessibility checker for documents. We take a look and talk about the whole idea of creating videos and making sure that the closed captioning is there, since you need to make sure that you're offering everything that you can possibly offer so that student can succeed. So when you take a look at the chat situation again and you're using your LMS, how are you what kinds of ADA requirement kinds of things are you taking care of to make sure that your course materials are meeting those? Are you doing the closed captioning? Are you using the accessibility checker in your Word program for documents? Are you teaching students how to use accessibility checkers so when they share their documents with other students, it's already gone through accessibility checker? What kinds
And
of
this
things
has to
are you
start,
using?
yeah, and this has to start with your course syllabus and your schedule. It's got to start right off the bat.
So in chat, go ahead and share those things with what are you currently doing? What are you making sure is there? It's difficult to keep up with all the requirements that are going on. Karen, what are you seeing so far?
Yes, some are talking about universal design, UD. Others are making sure their tables, their images, and their headings are all accessible. So sometimes you have to redesign the whole course versus just going in and fixing it, which is true. Blackboard has that piece called Allied that will help you with the accessibility. Someone put that in. And I
Some of
know
the
it's
other,
being
ahead.
piloted in Minnesota in D2L, LIS, so we'll see how that goes. Captioning or transcripts for all videos. Yep, so a lot of ally workers, a lot of people checking for accessibility, especially
That is
different
correct.
software.
And our tools are much better to do all of this now. When this came out so many years ago, people tried, but at the same time, they were literally listening to the videos they were making. They were hand typing everything in, all of that kind of a thing. And it was a real chore to be able to get through all of that. But the one thing I want to stress is, again, make sure that you're teaching your students how to use these same kinds of tools when they're creating videos, when they're creating assignment, things that they're going to be sharing with other students, because again, the students who are trying to view those that might be visually impaired in some point or whatever it is, they need to be able to really, see what's going on to get the full experience with your students. Plus, it's a marketable tool that they can put on their resume, that they're going out into the workplace and that they know how to be able to do these things. So you're really giving them even a better step up to being employed.
There's mentions about color that are high in contrast, careful for color blindness. I found that in the red and green area. Someone else said they have Read Speaker, and Read Speaker, the text to speech is wonderful. So yes, there's lots of things you can do. Someone else said they have an accessible syllabus template, which I believe we did at our school, which I believe is the key to start with. Give everyone an accessible syllabus template to start with.
And especially when you have adjuncts or part-time faculty who are working with you, they at least have something to start with at that point. They may not be well versed in this as some of you full-timers are, but they still need to be able to follow those requirements. And I think this is something that easily gets kind of forgotten about as you're going through all the things you need to do to get somebody prepared to jump into a course and be able to share those things. So that is great. Thank you for sharing those things. Let's talk for just a moment about learning technologies. I mean, I think that there are so many things that are just hitting us constantly right now. We know we're being barraged by technology in our personal lives, in our professional lives. So one of the things that we just wanted to give you a quick look at is, it's not all about bells and whistles. Great teaching and significant learning isn't just about the bells and whistles and is it really cool or not. Here are 4 questions you could really sort of ask yourself. Will the technology give students better practice, methods, or access to information so that they can actually master the learning outcomes better than they do now? So will it be new and improved as really new and improved? The second one, students need to work with the technology that they're going to use in the workplace. So that becomes critically important. Students should learn or remain current using wide technological innovations so that you're really preparing them. I guess we really can't say it for the 21st century anymore, but reminders that, since everything is changing and knowledge levels are growing so often, so frequently, what is it that they're going to need to be able to use? Goes back to that whole thing, if you remembered, shift happens, and the whole idea that we're preparing students for jobs that haven't been created to solve problems that we don't even know are problems yet. That's what we really need to really plan in doing in courses, especially with the technology pieces. And then, does it deliver some active learning? Will it improve student attention and retention and engagement as the technology takes them through, rather than is it cool to do? So I think that becomes increasingly important. And as you're looking at those integrated learning technologies, part of one of the things that we really also need to consider is it accessible for students? Since a lot of our students lost their internet connection during the pandemic, can they still be able to do some of these types of things that are key to your course? So I think that's another consideration. And since more students are buying phones than are buying laptop computers right now, what is your course like when it comes to seeing it on the phone? So if you haven't had a chance yet to actually look at your course on the phone, you might want to, because that's an incredible type of thing to see the way that some of your students are actually learning and the difficult times they may be having with some of that. But they can't afford the laptop and the phone. And they can't even sometimes afford the internet access. So they're sitting outside of Starbucks trying to get the access connection. We've had some of the folks that we've done the workshops with have really talked to us about that they put They put points out in the parking lot so that students could drive over to the campus and at least still stay connected. That is, if they had cars. Some of them, I think, were setting up buses that were sitting out there so they could be socially distanced. It would be warm. They could work during winter months, and they could still stay connected to internet access. So again, we've gone through a lot of stuff in this past year, and there's a lot of great lessons that we can learn from that. Let's take a look at course quality. The question always gets to be, is my course good? That's what we want to know. I mean, as faculty, we're designing courses, we're instructional designers. We want to know if the faculty are being successful with the course as it was designed. Whoever's designing the course and who's ever teaching the course really need to take a look at these kinds of things. So we spent some time talking to people about test drive, these informal assessments, test driving your course ahead of time, talking with some colleagues, talking with former students, talking with other people who know something about your course, that you can see how that works before you actually have students retake the course or take the course under the redesign portion there. And is it really solving the problems you want it to be able to do? We also took a look at ways that you could actually measure the quality of your course as you're teaching. So we found that a lot of people have started to really do these self-created surveys and evaluations, so that 2 or 3 or 4 times during the semester they're giving 5 to 10 point surveys in their course to be able to see how are students succeeding, how is the learning progressing, all the behind the scenes kind of thing. And students take it just like it was a survey, and they can share some of that information. We also took a look at more things that are reflective course shell discussions. That's a great place to see how students are learning, how they're viewing themselves, as I'll move into the forward-looking assessments, how they see themselves being a nurse, how they see themselves working as a biologist in the field. By doing a lot of those kinds of discussions, assignments, and testing through assessments, that way you get the opportunity to really learn what you want them to learn, and you go back and compare that to your big dream. Are they doing the things that you wanted them to achieve in your big dream? And for those of you who are familiar with the CATs, the classroom assessment techniques, and the LATs, learners assessment techniques, really breaking those down, keeping them informal, keeping them easy. You can put them at the end of a Zoom session. You can put them as part of the reflection in there. You can ask them what's the clearest point, the muddiest point, all those types of things that you would do in a 1-minute paper. Those pieces come in there beautifully. And of course, there's a lot more CATs and LATs than a 1-minute paper. So looking at how you could really put those into the design, and you can start to see the results as you're teaching, that becomes extremely important. Then, of course, you get the institutional course evaluation. So when you're done teaching, you get those kinds of things. Now, I don't know about you, but at Hennepin Technical College in Minneapolis, we really changed a couple of things. One is we didn't do them at the end of the semester. We started to do the institutional course evaluations about 2/3 of the way through the course. That way, we could compile the results, get them back to faculty by the end of the course itself, and they could really prepare for the next semester if they were going to teach that same course again. Most students by midterm time have pretty much an idea how it's going, what's happening, what their learning is all about in that course. Or if it's not, there still could be some time to take a look at it. That's why those self-created surveys and evaluations do such excellent job of giving you that information right up front, so that you can course correct, you can talk with students, you can share some of the feedback that they've shared with you, you can explain why you need to do some of the things you need to do, the way you need to do them. All of that adds to the communication. And then finally, you can take a look at what we'll show you in a minute here, sort of this assessing quality as your design itself looks like. You're self-assessing. You're getting a chance to take a look at design rubrics that will give you an opportunity to see if you're missing anything or look at those other pieces. Of course, you've got formal assessments, and some of the things that happen there is you've got the end of course surveys. You also have one that's not on the bullet here, which is going to be preparing for accreditation accreditation visits, site visits, people coming in, and things that you need to be able to do to share that information to continually be accredited. So there's those kinds of formal assessments. And then finally, you can have a peer-reviewed type of course assessment through Quality Matters or other institutions where you're paying the money, you're having a group of peers from across the country that are taking a look at your course from a design standpoint, from a content standpoint, because there's a subject matter expert there, and all those things kind of come into play. So using several of these really gives you a ton of feedback. They don't have to be the formalized, they can be the freebies that are on the left-hand column there. They take a little bit of your time, but you also really ensure that you know exactly what's happening in your course and that you can address it and you can talk to students about it if there's a concern there. So here's a set of them that we actually published in the book, but one of the things is I actually created this for a couple of community and technical colleges in Minnesota as we broke this down, and we're using them at several other institutions, the state universities and things as well. So when you begin to look at that, I realize you cannot read this. I mean, I'm sorry for that. So let me blow one of those up for you a little bit more. But you can see that as we look at the course overview, you begin to take a look at those pieces, the getting started in the course, the purpose of the course, along with its description, what are the technological requirements that are in there, and then building course community. And you can assess this yourself. You can take a look at this, gives you a chance to sort of see how that rubric might fit for you, and it gives you a ton of feedback. So as you self-assess it or somebody assesses the course with you, you can take a look at the things that you're missing. You can take a look at ideas that you may want to be able to add as you do a redesign in your course. Any thoughts or questions, anything that you have about doing those sort of self-assessments and those kinds of things there? I'm guessing, as we've seen in this past year, many people, as they've moved to online, are really spending more time. So feel free to share anything with us about that as you go through this presentation, and go ahead and throw those in chat, and we can share those when we get done here too as sort of a Q&A session. So we have the different flavors of student learning, as you know, and as we assess that student learning, we've got informal versus formal assessments, we've got formative versus summatives, we've got backwards versus forward-looking. That may be newer for some of you people. And then we have auditive versus educative. And so let's take a look at those in a little bit more of a graphic form. As you look at the left side, you can see auditive assessments. This really comes into that sort of foundational knowledge, the basic sharing of information, learning information. It tends to be backward looking. We tend to look at, did you learn the vocabulary? Have you learned when and where things are? Can you identify and name things? All of that kind of stuff is backward looking assessment, where we're asking you to basically tell us what it is that you've learned so far. We use that pretty much in a lot of traditional grading. However, when we really take a look at course design that's moving toward the future, it needs to be more educative. So this is where we are using those other domains, the application, the implementation, human dimensions, caring, learning how to learn. Those domains become extremely important in this, because now you're getting students to use, first of all, forward-looking assessment. They can use self-assessment. They could use peer assessment in there so that they're able to look through rubrics, they're looking through ideas, they're talking with one another before you have to see it. Before it's touching you, they may be able to correct many kinds of things that you could spend hours trying to correct with them, especially with a larger class, that they could take care of themselves first. The criteria and standards, again, are your rubrics, checklists, those kinds of things that come into play. So you'll have an opportunity to make sure that students are turning in complete assignments, and that you don't have to look at them now and then look at them again when they actually do something better. So the more information you can push out to students ahead of time so they see exactly what it is they need to be able to do, the better it is. We all like that. We all like in our jobs to know what is expected and what we need to be able to do so we don't waste a lot of our time. And the last part of that becomes this fidelity feedback, which is again, is the feedback you're providing students frequent, immediate? It's using that criteria, having to do with a rubric or something, that way that you're really showing students exactly what it is that you're expecting from them. And then finally, is it respectful? Does it come back to students in a respectful sort of way so that they're motivated to improve? One of the things I always suggest is, are you having students then write a reflection about those kinds of assessments and the feedback that they're getting so that they're going to use it in the future? What is their plan for using that feedback? How will they see themselves improving by using the feedback you're giving them? So in my courses, I spent a lot of time talking with students and giving them the feedback piece. The rest of the things were all ready to go. There were the rubrics, there were the ideas, the design was there so that as many things that could be automated was possible. So I'm spending most of my whole entire course really working with feedback in one form or another. What we get through this kind of assessment really gets to be more authentic, and we get authentic grading. This is grading that students are actually helping to sort of determine. It's the grade they're earning, not the grade that you're giving them. And so that's a nice way to take a look at that. So when you take a look at this, here's your chance to participate and share again. In your courses, what do you think is the most impactful assessment that increases your students' level of performance? When you do this in your class, what is it? What really gets them to perform better the next time they turn in an assignment? Please share that in the chat.
Okay, we've got things like interactive, hands-on work, clear expectations, clear directions, maybe even a template or examples is always a good one. Or getting them to link to personal experience with whatever they've read, learned.
That's right.
Perhaps the opportunity to redo an assignment after receiving comments. Start out with revisions built in, low-stake assignments in the beginning.
Absolutely.
Screencast responses to assignments.
Those are all great ways of doing that. The peer reviews, and again, I think that's the way to be able to just sort of looking at, in a sense, they can redo the assignment after they go through the peer review process before it reaches your eyes, as well. So there's another one. The audio feedback that you may be able to use in your LMS is also really nice because they hear the tone of your voice. So that's nice. They can go back and listen to it again. So everything that you've got here, the one-on-one meetings when you can do that, especially through Zoom, if for the social distancing part, those are great ways of doing this. So thanks for sharing those. And those are they're all falling into this educative assessment piece. All right. So now, how does that tie in? One of the things that we've really discovered was the fact that, and we know this, assessment comes in pieces. Oh, we've got to get this part of an assessment done. We've got to get this part of an assessment done. But is there a plan at your institution to really tie it all together from unit assessments that are taking place that students are taking and that you can start to look at some feedback to your course outcome assessments? So we can see the students and how they're mastering those. So that happens at the course level. Then, of course, you get the course survey assessment. You get that course evaluation at the very end, which can tie into your course. It can tie into your program and department. You have department outcomes that you can be, or program outcomes that you can assess and show that you're doing that, all the way up that those move to the institution. And so what a lot of faculty have done is you really start to spend this time taking a look at, in this course that I'm teaching, I know that I am hitting this outcome in the department. I know that I may also be helping in the institutional assessment. Let's say, for instance, you have an oral and written communication piece. Maybe you're doing something in your course that leads to showing that you've got data for this level, and your IR person could really help out with that as you go through and you start to extract that information. You all know that you have a variety of ways of looking at programs and similarly institutional. So I'll give you a chance to kind of look at the bubbles here and get a chance to see what those are. But for some of you, you have advisory boards, either at your program and department level or at the institutional level that are giving you feedback. You have accreditation, assessment. You have the idea that you're looking at skills and outcomes, especially in career and tech ed. There may be state or national mandates that you need to be able to hit, standards that you need to be able to take a look at. So all of those become extremely important, and we take a look at those when we're working with faculty as well to see all the different assessment pieces that are there. It's not just how well someone's done in a course. It really now starts to expand beyond that so that you can see that you're really spending a lot of your time working together, and that as an institution, it's a well-oiled machine for putting that together. So your own personal reflection of practice. We start to apply, assess, reflect on your teaching. So if we start at the 12 o'clock circle up at the top, you learn something from teaching literature, which then you use in your courses. And you can then assess the effectiveness using a feedback to adjust the way you're using it. It's starting to work well, so then you share it with colleagues and you share it with other people. You even go to a conference and you start to share how this is really working in your course. And then finally, it gets you more to reflecting on your teaching and student learning, and that causes you again in a cycle mode to go back and read up some more on something else or something there. So in the chat, if you would please share, how do you reflect, or what do you use of these 5 circles? What do you see yourself using the most? You can say all of them, or you can say some of them, whatever is the most important to you. But how do you improve your own teaching practice as you go through looking at this?
Okay, several said all of it. One said survey. One said Post-it notes on lesson plans for things to change the next time. Keep good communication with the learners, so I know what is working. All of it. Attending conferences and internal course surveys to gather feedback. Always a good one.
So we talked about this at the very beginning, and some of you shared about this whole idea of the growth and the anxiety and the things that happened when the pandemic took over. We worked with faculty at the university level last April, and they were really panicked about what they do. They're going to have to change their practice. How do I teach online? What do I need to be able to do? Some folks who've been teaching online for 10 years had no problems. It was like, okay, tweak here and tweak there, and I'm ready to go. But you've seen this probably from different designs as it's gone through. And I created the one of teaching online due to COVID-19. So we went through that fear zone, or some faculty needed to go through the fear zone. We went into the learning zone from there, and the statements began to change. I need to learn how to grow. I need to make things different. I can do this. Those kinds of things started to happen. And then you got to the growth zone, where I think many faculty are now. They still want some changes. They still want to know how to do some things, obviously, because we just got done with a institute that's a 3-week institute last Friday. And so we know that people are still going and getting into this growth stage, but they feel like they've got the tools. They feel like they know what they're doing. And so those become extremely important. Your students go through this very same thing. They walk into your course, they might be afraid, they might be ready to learn, and you need to get them to the growth zone in your course so that they can begin to move on. And that becomes an extremely important part of our design. We need to remember that we are experts as the faculty. Our students are walking in as novices or somewhere along the line, but they are not the experts yet. So we really need to go back and think about how we learned the material that we learned. How did we feel? What did we need to go through, and how did that work out? So obviously you can go to conferences, you can come into working with your Center for Teaching and Learning, or whatever it happens to be called, and join the campus community of learners on your at your institution, so you've got the opportunity to do that. And so these are some, of course, some of the things that centers can offer and be able to provide, so you can really take a look at those, because many of them are staffed by maybe some very veteran faculty who have seen a lot throughout years and have a good idea of what resources they can guide you to. So that is that. We're going to take some time for some opening of questions here at this point, and let's do that. But just wanted to show you that all the stuff that we shared with you right now is pretty much in the book, which is nice. There's a lot of different things. You can use the QR code if you want to right now and probably pick up that website. We have a lot more things on our website as well that we keep doing. We have worked with the online institute. We've got workshops, we've got articles, we've got teaching tips. All those kinds of things are on this website as a great resource for you. And the book is written much the way of sort of a workbook, guidebook, as you walk your way through each of the chapters. And I know for sure that one of the people that are in here right now who just got the book and was spending some time reading on it and contacted me. So that was fantastic. At any rate, ideas, questions, comments?
If not, I think we are out of time. We sure enjoyed sharing our knowledge with everyone. Thank you all for attending. Feel free to contact us if you have any questions, and there will be a link to the recording available at some point.
Have a great day, and we'll see you in some of the other sessions.
Hey guys, you okay if I stop the recording now?
Sure.
Sure, go ahead.
Uh,
Thanks, Adam.
Sure.